This is a project file on an urban renewal scheme in the east of Ramat HaSharon in the Morasha neighbourhood. 6 residential towers, 19 stories each, 687 apartments when it is finished. Everything you are about to see of it is a computer render, because in Phase B there is nothing yet to photograph. We are going to call it Ramat HaSharon 001, our own reference, so this stays a file about a scheme rather than an advertisement. We act for buyers on projects like this one, so the useful thing we can hand you is not a brochure. It is the 7 questions we would put to this developer before letting a client of ours sign anything. Start with what is being built. 6 towers on one block, 19 stories each, 687 apartments between them. This is the developer's own daytime render, and it is worth counting rather than admiring. The published information says 6 towers. Count what is actually drawn and you get 5 or 6 depending on how you treat the paired blocks. That is not a scandal. A render is made at one moment in a long planning process, and phases are often drawn separately. It is exactly why a render is an illustration and never a specification. Where a picture and a number disagree, ask which one the permit agrees with. The published mix runs from 3 rooms up to 6, with garden apartments at the bottom and duplexes, mini penthouses, and penthouses at the top. That matters more than it sounds. One building holding that many different products means your neighbors bought something quite different from you, and those do not move together when you come to sell. At street level, the plan carries commercial space, shops and cafes next to a large green park. The render shows an evening street with named shop fronts, and those names are set dressing. Nobody has signed a lease in a render. Ask what is actually let and to whom, and if you are looking at a low floor, ask what sits underneath you at 11 at night. Between the towers, the render shows a landscaped block, paths, planting, play areas, cycle paths. The schools are the strongest thing in the picture because they already exist. A primary, a junior high, and a high school, all in walking distance, all with reputations you can ask about because they were there long before this scheme was. What the render does not show is who maintains the rest of it. This is a pinui-binui scheme which matters more than any other single fact on this page. Pinui-binui means evacuate and build. The people who lived here handed over their apartments, the old buildings come down, and something far denser goes up on the same land. The original owners get a new apartment, usually a larger one. The extra apartments, the ones that pay for the whole exercise, are what is sold on the open market. Those are the apartments you would be buying. So part of your building belongs to families who lived on this block before the towers existed. That is normal. It is not a problem in itself, but it does mean the scheme's history is part of your due diligence. In a way, it would not be on a greenfield site. Now, the part that actually matters. This scheme is being built in 2 phases. Towers 1 and 2 were Phase A. The other 4 towers are Phase B, and Phase B is what is being marketed now. The published information said Phase A was due for occupation in September 2024. Read that date again. It has passed. The developer's own page was last updated at the end of 2024 and still carried it. So the very first question before the brochure, before the price list, before anything about Phase B is what actually happened to Phase A. Did those 2 towers hand over on time? If not, by how many months? Because a developer's record on the phase you can verify is the best evidence you will ever get about the phase you cannot. That is not a criticism of this scheme. Delay is normal in Israeli construction, and it has been more normal than usual these last few years. It is a question and it has an answer, and the answer is knowable. You just have to ask for it in writing rather than accept a date from a sales office. Which brings us to the second question. What delivery date is in your contract? Not the date on the brochure, not the date the salesperson says, the date in the document you sign. For contracts signed from the 7th of July 2022, the statutory late delivery ladder runs like this: nothing for the first month, then 1 month's rent in compensation for months 2 to 4, 1.25 times for months 5 to 10, 1.5 times from month 11 onwards, A contract with no fixed delivery date at all is the clause that costs money, and it is the one to look for first. Third, your security. Under the sale of apartments, Assurance of Investments Law of 1974, no more than 7% of the price may be taken from you before a prescribed security is in place. In practice, that is a bank guarantee. Get the guarantee document itself, check it names you, and check it names the correct apartment. A promise that one will follow is not a security. Fourth, linkage. The first 20% of the price cannot be index linked at all, and no more than half of each later payment may be linked, so at most 40% of the total is exposed to the index. Linkage stops at the contractual delivery date, not at handover, which is precisely why the delivery date clause matters twice over. Fifth, purchase tax. An oleh using Regulation 12A, an Israeli resident buying a single home, and a foreign resident all pay very different amounts on the same apartment. At Ramat HaSharon prices, the gap between the foreign resident rate and the oleh rate runs well into six figures. Establish which ladder you are on before you agree a price, not after. Sixth, where the existing owners stand. Part of the building is going to households who lived here before you, so ask how the evacuation went, whether any of it is still in litigation, and what that does to the program for your tower. Seventh, which tower, which floor, which side. 6 towers on one block do not share one view, one noise position, or one delivery date. Establish which phase your tower is in, what gets built next to it, and when, what faces the road, and where the parking and the podium sit. In a 19-story building, those things decide the resale price far more than the address does. Which brings us to the interiors, the most misread pictures in the set. This is a large apartment with a view. It is beautiful, and it is not evidence of anything. The furniture is not included, and the finishes were chosen by a visualizer, not by your contract. These 4 show a standard, not a delivery. The document that binds is the technical specification, the Mifrat Techni, which lists the brands, tolerances, and finishes you are actually buying. Compare it against the render, and where they differ, the Mifrat wins. Note, too, what the windows face. One of these looks out over open ground, and open ground in a renewal quarter is the next site. Then there are the amenities, a roof terrace, a pool, a view to the sea on a clear day. 2 questions before any of that means anything to you. First, whether the pool is consented and built in your phase or in somebody else's. Second, what it does to the building charge every month for as long as you own the apartment. The same applies to the resident's lounge. Ask what the Va'ad Bayit is projected to cost in a building with a pool, a lounge, and grounds like these, and then ask who gave you the number. What phase A residents actually pay today is a fact, and you can get it. So what about the address itself? Ramat HaSharon is one of the most expensive municipalities in Israel, and Morasha has historically been its cheapest quarter. The eastern edge, older stock, closer to the motorway than to the country clubs. Urban renewal is what closes that gap, and closing it is the whole investment case here. You are buying the difference between what the neighbourhood was and what the city intends it to become. There is a new junction under construction, putting routes 4, 5, and 6 within a few minutes of the door. So for an Anglo family, this is a short drive to Tel Aviv without paying a Tel Aviv price in a city with a functioning English-speaking community. Look once more at the wide shots because the developer's own pictures are honest about something the text never is. Red-roofed houses right up against the towers. Open fields on one side and open ground in a renewal quarter is usually the next scheme. Construction visible in the middle distance. So the pictures are the warning. A renewal quarter is a building site for years, and with 6 towers phased across a single block, the later buyers live beside the later cranes. Motorway access is also motorway proximity, so check the aspect before you take a view on any specific apartment, and the premium is already partly priced in. This is not an undiscovered corner of Israel. It is a well-known one, being rebuilt. Everything in this file comes from the developer's own published project information, from press reports at the time, and from the developer's own renders. Some of it is certainly out of date, including that delivery date, which is exactly why we check it ourselves rather than repeat it. And take Israeli legal advice on the contract and on the securities before you pay anything at all, including a reservation deposit. So here is the offer. We will establish where Phase A actually got to. We will send you what is actually available in Phase B floor by floor, which moves faster than any published page. And we will read the contract with you before you sign it. That is the whole service, and it is the reason this file exists.